to show you this fascinating clip of Congresswoman Madeleine Dean and Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. Now, I'm not sure if they knew this conversation was being recorded, but you need to watch.
The president is unhinged. He is unwell. What are you doing?
Folks on your side are too. I don't control.
Oh my God, please. That performance in front of the generals, that
I didn't see it.
is so dangerous. You know I serve on Foreign Affairs and Appropriations. This is a collision of those two things. Our allies are looking elsewhere. Our enemies are laughing.
I just left
You
the
have a
speaker's
president
side.
who is unwell.
I found this exchange fascinating. First of all, Mike Johnson saying he didn't bother to watch Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth's embarrassing paper tiger display in front of our military leaders, which just made us look unbelievably weak on the world stage. Showed that Pete Hegseth is completely unqualified to lead the Department of Defense. By the way, he likes to say he runs the Department of War. Trump's executive orders are not law. It is still officially the Department of Defense, being run by day drunk Pete Kegsbreath, former Fox News host who has no fucking business running the United States Department of Defense and who just insulted the shit out of our military leaders. You could just see the disdain for Pete dripping off of them. They were like, are you fucking kidding me? This is what they looked like in that meeting. As Pete Hegseth was calling them fatties and beardies, saying he wants to kick women out of the armed forces, lying about the requirements that women must fulfill in order to serve. Then as Donald Trump declares that there's a war from within and he intends to use our service members against American civilians in American cities. After Pete Hegseth said that we need soldiers who are good at war making, and proceeded to talk about how physically fit he was and how he doesn't like seeing fat generals and admirals. Donald Trump was slurring his speech. He seemed sedated. He seemed completely out of touch with reality in that meeting on Wednesday. If Joe Biden had presented like that in a public meeting, the media would be fucking all over it, claiming that he was demented, he was unfit for office. Now, Governor J.B. Pritzker said just that about Donald Trump. He said the 25th Amendment needs to be invoked. Donald Trump said that he wants to wage war on Americans in American cities. He wants to turn the military against Americans. And then he proceeded to slur and ramble about complete lies about his claim that firefighters up ladders were being shot at. He rambled some more about the escalator thing at the UN. It was just the most disgraceful display. So J.B. Pritzker has said Donald Trump is unfit. 25th Amendment should be invoked. This meeting was consequential in that it was an embarrassment to every American, to every member of our armed services, and it showed the entire world how weak the leader of our Department of Defense is, how weak Donald Trump is. I am sure that our adversaries around the world had a field day with that footage. And the fact that Mike Johnson said he didn't bother to watch it. But let me pivot a little bit here, because the thing that I found most interesting was here we see Representative Madeleine Dean, who was willing to go and talk to Speaker Johnson. I get asked all the time why it is that I don't run for Congress. One, I think my Congresswoman is doing a good job. She's a freshman. She's learning the ropes, and she's trying to fight for the American people. But two, I do not have the skill set. I could not do what Madeleine Dean did. I could not have a conversation and be civil with Mike Johnson, Christo-fascist Speaker of the House, who is betraying his oath to the Constitution, and also uses his teenage son as an accountability buddy and tells his kid every time he jerks off, he's a fucking creep. Anyway, I couldn't do that job. And I think it's important to remember our elected representatives who are fighting for us are having conversations that we don't see. One of the things my Congresswoman Maxine Dexter talks about is how she is having side conversations. She's trying to persuade people. She's constantly working on people. Now, do I think Madeleine Dean is going to convince Mike Johnson of anything? Do I think Mike Johnson has a conscience? Do I think Mike Johnson cares about anything other than his power and creating a theocratic, Christo-fascist, white nationalist state in the United States? No. But mad props to Madeleine Dean for trying. I think there are other Republicans in Congress who know that what they're doing is wrong. They know that what they're doing is hurting the American people and is destroying democracy. And I think that this clip here gave us an interesting glimpse into the conversations that are happening. I personally don't think that there is any hope for bipartisanship. I understand that there are situations where Republicans have flipped. Republicans are voting with Democrats on a few issues. And on a state and local level, I think absolutely there's far more hope, right? We just had a Republican member of the Oregon House who flipped from Republican to Democratic because he could no longer be aligned with what today's Republican Party is. I think there are registered Republicans in public office who have a conscience, who know that this is wrong, and that I think it is worthy. It is a not a lost cause for our elected officials to try and reach them, to keep having those conversations, to keep trying to pressure them and work on them, right? Because that is a key aspect of stopping a fascist regime. You have to erode the pillars of support under Donald Trump. And the Republicans in the House and the Senate are the biggest, strongest pillar of support for Donald Trump. They have absolutely gone along with his agenda every step of the way. They may tell their constituents, I don't like this, like Lisa Murkowski. I don't think this is particularly good, but you guys, I got to go along with it because I'm scared. Whatever other bullshit she says, right? So see, Republicans who are in Donald Trump's pocket are willing to lick his boots and do whatever he wants, even if they know that it's wrong. I hope none of those fuckers can sleep at night. I hope their conscience is pricking the shit out of them. But the main way that we stop a fascist regime is not like protests, really good, right? That's really good for our morale, for bringing people into the movement. That's super important. It makes a big public display to businesses, to other pillars of support that the public is opposed to this. There's mass public opposition. That's really good. But it is the work of chiseling away, of eroding those pillars of support that will cause Donald Trump to topple. And that's not like a one and done. That's not, you just send an email. That is having those conversations over and over. It is constant pressure. You have to sit there with your little chisel and just go and go and go and go until you whittle away that pillar and it topples. And so I think it's so good and worthy for our members of Congress or any elected official on any level to be having conversations with their colleagues, even though their colleagues are betraying them, even though their colleagues are outright fascists. I don't believe that most people are evil. I don't believe most people in this country are Stephen Millers or Russell Votes or Mike Johnsons. I don't believe most members of Congress are either. So I hope that those conversations keep happening. I hope that Democratic members of Congress keep the pressure up. But also this clip is a good reminder to us that we should be having those conversations, right? I know that a lot of us want to cut off our Trump family members, or a lot of us are hesitant to talk to our neighbors right now. And I'm not saying if you are in a vulnerable group that is being targeted by the regime that you should go put yourself in a position where your safety is at risk to have those conversations, right? I'm not asking all Black Americans or all trans folks to go talk to their neighbors or their coworkers who are like rabid Trumpers. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if we have connections with people and we can have those conversations. Some of the people I know that voted for Donald Trump, they're not rabid Trumpers. They're pretty fucking deluded. They're also really checked out. A number of them are quite wealthy and really thought that it would be economically better for them under Donald Trump, and they have not paid that much attention to everything else that he's doing. So I guess I want you to look at that conversation that Madeleine Dean was willing to have with Mike Johnson and think about if there are people in your life that you're willing to have that conversation with, and have no expectation that you're going to change their mind, because it's not going to be a one and done. Are there people in your life that you could reach out to and just plant those seeds? Ask them to remember their humanity. Ask them to look at what's happening, to honestly face what is happening, look at the details, not through the lens of Fox News, not just being completely checked out and saying, oh, this doesn't impact me that much, I'm still doing well, but asking them to connect with their humanity, asking them to listen to you, with no expectation that they're going to flip immediately, and then being willing to go back and continue to chisel, right? Being willing to continue to have those conversations around every issue over and over again. In a way that I think it's so easy for us to yell and be angry and be just like outraged because Trump voters, right, they brought about this horrible timeline that we're living now. It's so easy to just let our rage take over, to become emotionally dysregulated and just vent. But what's our end goal? This is sort of like I say when we're looking at people who want to do violence when they're protesting, and it's unstrategic, right? It's just about venting your rage and not thinking about the ultimate goal of how do we move the needle? How do we work to undermine the regime? Are my actions undermining the regime? I really want you to think about that when you identify people in your social circle, in your family that you can have conversations with. How do you approach them as another person? You view that conversation not as something to let you vent your righteous anger, but instead an opportunity to erode those pillars of support under the regime. Would you be willing to do that work, even if it feels like you're not going to change their mind? Because you don't really know. You don't really know. I know for me, watching this video, I identified a couple of people that I think it may be worth like reopening dialogue and having conversations with them, knowing that it may take going back over and over and over again. And being willing to expend that labor, experience that frustration, have to control my temper, realize that there may not be immediate results, but it's still really worth doing. So think about that as you're trying to undermine those pillars of support. Who can you identify? Who are you willing to reach out to? Is this a sacrifice that you can make? These kinds of small contributions, these kinds of small efforts of resistance are really important.